Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Devanshi and we are joined here today with Ben Nicholson, Steve Hannaford and Faryal Sheikh from one of the West Midlands leading independent commercial property consultants, Burley Browne.
Hello everyone, I'm Dan, and in today's career seminar on behalf of the Sutton Coldfield Chamber of Commerce as well as Sutton Coldfield Youth Council, we are going to be conducting an interview with these three professionals and learn about their journeys through education, running a business, and running a business right here in Sutton Coldfield.
Burley Browne is a member of the Sutton Coldfield Chamber of Commerce, and there is more information about them on their website, which will be posted in the chat box. There will also be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So please post any questions you have in the chat during or after the presentation.
I'm sure we're very excited to learn more, but just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be distributed throughout students in Sutton Coldfield. So please keep your cameras off and make sure you're muted throughout the presentation. Okay, over to you guys to tell us a bit about your journey really through education and how you've got to where you are today.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, full start. So thank you for the introduction. Thank you to Chris and Alex for inviting us this evening to just give you a quick insight as to who we are, what we do, and the route that we took to get to where we are now. We have produced a PDF slide just with a bit of background on who we are again and the services that we do as chartered surveyors, which I think Chris and Alex will circulate to you shortly. No goodie bags though tonight, I'm afraid, so we'll see how we go. I think obviously we wanted to start this evening with obviously wishing everybody well through this difficult time, and obviously we hope everybody's families are keeping well, because it's tricky to say the least, and particularly for you guys as students, you know, having to effectively learn remotely is a bit of a challenge for you guys. So obviously, hopefully the green shoots of recovery are nearly there, and come the summer, hopefully we'll be there. But rather than rabbiting on, which I'm quite good at, I'll give hopefully a bit of a quick brief summary of who we are. So my name's Ben Nicholson. I'm an associate director at Burley Browne, which are a firm of chartered surveyors in Sutton Coldfield. This evening, myself and colleagues Faryal Sheikh and Stephen Hannaford will just give you an insight and a bit of background on our experience as chartered surveyors. So in terms of the company, Burley Browne, we're an independent firm of chartered surveyors that specialise in commercial property matters and was formed in 1999. One of the first questions I often get asked is, what is a chartered surveyor? And it's quite a good question, actually. I don't know if I've got the answer, but we'll give it a go. So broadly speaking, we assist with commercial property services and provide assistance to individuals, businesses, banks, investors, developers, multinational companies, a real broad range of different, as we would call them, clients. Services that we do, again, there's a whole range that have been noted on those slides, but broadly speaking, the services that we do can be buying, selling, renting. We can value properties, and we also deal with sort of landlord and tenant matters, which I think Stephen Faryal will come on to with what they do on a day-to-day basis shortly. So as a company, we're based in Sutton Coldfield, but we cover the wider Midland region and beyond. We're associated with other companies around the UK. So our stretch and reach is sort of on a national basis. So you can get involved in commercial property matters on quite a wide location, really, which is quite exciting, actually. So moving on to sort of how I got into it, I thought I'd just bore you a little bit with my background. So I was looking in a way that I was about 15, 16 years old, and my dad was in the industry, and sort of got me thinking about what I wanted to do moving forward. And it was around about 15 or 16, I actually knew that I wanted to be a surveyor, and it was partly by luck as well. But at that time, I was sport crazy, mad about football, still am, and I was pretty adamant I was going to be a footballer. I never was. I was absolutely terrible, but in my own mind, I was pretty certain I was going to be a footballer. I'm a Walsall fan, don't laugh, and I wanted to be the superstar striker for Walsall. And it took one day, my dad sat me down and just said, look, you are terrible at football and you're never going to do it. So I had to sort of sit down and think about what I wanted to do. And the first thing that was suggested to me was that I tried a bit of work experience in a few different areas. I did that, but the biggest one was that I actually went in and did a week's work experience with my dad at a local authority within a commercial department. It was property. And if I'm honest, I hated every day. It was terrible. I was photocopying, I was making tea. It was just really dull and boring. The last day, though, on the Friday, I actually got situated with the in-house surveyor, and I didn't know what a surveyor did. And almost immediately, I found a change in that the day-to-day work involved both a bit of office desk work, but also a little bit of external site visits, inspecting properties, and I thought that was quite interesting. So I was probably taken by that straight away. So on the day I actually did the work experience, I was assisting the surveyor, which meant I was going from different sites to see different buildings, inspecting them, measuring them, taking photos. And one of the broad appeals, which I still hold today, is that as a surveyor, you do get to see a real range of different commercial properties. So, I mean, in my time, I've seen anything from offices through to shops, to industrial units, to sports grounds, to cinemas, you name it. It's been quite interesting, really, and diverse. So from that first week experience, I went and organised a second week's work experience, but with a private independent firm of surveyors, which again was great. I was going to different cities, I was seeing different buildings, sampling different architecture, and gradually, bit by bit, I was developing a bit more of an interest for it. So from there, the bad news really is to become a chartered surveyor, you have to work pretty hard, and in my case, very hard. So GCSEs, A-levels got me through to take a property-related degree at Birmingham City University. That was a 3-year degree course, which again was great, you know, and a real good step into the profession. I'll fast forward a bit through this now because Stephen and Faryal will come onto it in a bit more detail than I will. But from finishing my degree, I managed to get a job as a graduate surveyor within a firm in Birmingham, and that was my first professional role in a firm, and it was great because it showed me sort of a start into the profession. And back then I was predominantly based in the valuation department, so producing reports for a variety of different commercial and residential buildings at the time, and reporting on what you believed would be an approximate valuation figure, i.e. how much a building might be worth. So that was great. That was a great sort of step into it. And also working in Birmingham was a really good experience for me. You know, it's a great city. There's lots to do there, particularly at that age that you are. It's quite an exciting place to be. So yeah, from there, I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to come to Burley Browne, and I'm pleased to say that I'm still here, thankfully. but it was where Burley Browne, when I joined Burley Browne, sorry, was where I really sort of kicked on with my training, and it gave me a real broad horizon for sampling different areas and specialisms within the profession. Again, the training period to become a chartered surveyor, I think Stephen will come on to shortly, but in essence, it's a minimum period, I think, I might be wrong on this, but a minimum period of 2 years of recorded training after your degree, assuming that your degree is a property-related course. Again, Stephen and Faryal came into the profession from slightly different angles. So again, they'll explain how they got into it, which is slightly different to mine. But it's 2 years of recorded training, which is finalised by a pretty scary X Factor style interview where you present in front of 3 qualified chartered surveyors, and the interview is about an hour. You present for about 10-15 minutes, and then you have questions for the duration. If you are successful with that, you then are deemed qualified as a chartered surveyor. But don't worry if you don't get through, because as in my case, it took me 2 goes. You are then offered to resit at a later date, which I think when I took it, which was quite a long time ago, and there was about a 6 to 12 month gap, I think is. So it's not too bad. So once you've got the interview, you're qualified, you become a chartered surveyor, and you, as a badge of honour, really get to use letters after your name to include as a recognised qualification. And it's something that I'm still proud to have achieved up to now, and it's a bit of a badge of honour in the profession. So yeah, that's hopefully something I can carry with me for the rest of my working career. It's a vocation, and it's a good industry to be part of as a professional. I think, as I said previously, I think the real appeal for me to begin with was the change and diverse day to day, seeing different things and experience different properties was a big plus for me. So hopefully everybody is still awake after that. But I think the plan now is really for me to hand over to my colleague Stephen, who will discuss his route and experience to where he is now as qualified chartered surveyor, and a very good one. And then following that, Faryal will pick up and also give a bit of background as to how she got into it and her day-to-day experience. So over to you, Steve, if that's okay.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, so I joined the company in 2015 as a graduate and then qualified in May 2018. My route into the profession is similar in some ways to the route Ben has just discussed in terms of undertaking a university course, but it's also very different. So when I was 15/16, I didn't really have any idea of what I wanted to do with my career, or I didn't have a family member that was in the profession or loosely related to the profession. And I suspect a number of you on the call will probably be able to relate to that. And the first thing I would say is that's completely normal. So to go from the start, I, following completion of my GCSEs, attended sixth form, completed the International Baccalaureate, which is similar to A-levels. I'm not sure if any of you have come across it as an alternative. But I'm happy to answer any questions on it at the end. But it's similar to A-levels. You do 6 subjects, so it keeps your options open and it's very varied. So after completing that, so at the age of 18, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I decided to pick the subject I was best at, which happened to be geography. So I went on to do a geography and urban planning degree at the University of Birmingham. wasn't exactly interesting or engaging, but nevertheless, I wasn't successful in securing a job related to that degree. So ended up working in retail management for Marks and Spencer's on their graduate programme over at Merry Hill for about 3 to 4 months. And then one day I was reading the Sutton Coldfield Observer. I think I was on the train into Sutton at the time, and I noticed a job advertising the role of a junior surveyor, which I hadn't heard of before. I didn't know what a surveyor was, but it sounded quite interesting. So I researched a little more about the role of a surveyor, about the company, and applied for the job. And to cut a long story short, I was offered the job as a junior surveyor. No experience in the industry or the role, so starting from scratch. And this is where it gets a little complicated. So when you probably start to think, what is he going on about? But I'll try and be as succinct as possible, and hopefully you'll still be awake at the end of this. So Ben touched upon about having a recognised degree. Now, my degree that I'd done at Birmingham wasn't recognised as a property degree, so I had to complete a master's degree or a conversion course, or what the Americans term real estate now. So that took 2 years to complete part-time, but that was alongside working full-time. So there were evenings, weekends where I'd be up late, early, doing that work, just so that I could then apply to start my APC, which is the assessment of professional competence, which is the interview and the diary that Ben mentioned previously. And just to give a bit more detail on that, it is 2 years, that's the minimum, 2 years. You can do a little bit longer if you need to, but you are assessed on different competencies. You prepare a case study and a presentation, which is submitted to the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. And then, as Ben said, it culminates in an interview with 3 other chartered surveyors who will question you on your experience, your knowledge, and the case study. So the diary itself assesses a number of competencies. So examples of those would be letting / sale of commercial property, rent reviews, lease renewals, or valuation. And there are a number of other pathways in property, not just commercial property, but there are building surveying, environmental planning. So there's a whole host of different routes that you can go down. The case study itself is exactly what it says, really. You pick a project related to your experience, prepare a case study outlining what your role was, what professional advice you gave to the clients, what the outcome was, and then you reflect at the end on what you could have done better. And then the presentation is effectively you present your case study during the interview to the panel, and they will then ask you questions on your case study, and again just delve into a bit more about what you did, what your advice was, and why you gave that. And the interview finishes up with questions about your general experience day to day in the diary. So I think, as Ben said, it's not easy. It requires hard work, organisation, time management, and commitment. But if you do pass the APC, you are classed as a chartered surveyor, you are qualified. And from my experience, that opens up great career prospects for you. You get to meet a lot of new people, socialise with other professionals, meet business owners, and you experience people from all walks of life who have different stories to tell. So fast forwarding to today a little bit, I'm heavily involved with the letting / sale of commercial property, so particularly office buildings around Sutton, Lichfield, Tamworth, but across the West Midlands as well. And as I say, I get to meet a lot of different people, and the good thing is that no day is the same, so it is impossible to get bored in the job. So hopefully you found that useful in terms of a slightly different route into the profession, particularly if you don't really know what you want to do at the moment. It is okay to be in that position. As I say, I was in that position until I was in my early 20s. But yeah, I'll hand over to Faryal now, who I think has obviously experience to discuss with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Faryal Sheikh. I'm senior surveyor here, and I oversee the commercial property management department. I came on board with Burley Browne last year, September, and I think it was quite a risk given what's been happening in the market, the uncertainty around jobs. But for me, it just seemed like a really good opportunity at the time. My former employer where I worked and Burley Browne had a couple of mutual clients, and I'd had dealings with the likes of Steve and the director here. So it was kind of comforting for me to know that I'm going where I know people. And it was a smaller firm from where I was previously, but I think looking back now, it was definitely a really good decision for me. I've been in commercial surveying for about 6 years now, and I think it's probably the second time in my working life that I've experienced a period of uncertainty, albeit probably not to the scale. But I graduated in 2011, which I think some of you will probably be too young to remember, but we were coming out of the recession at the time, and additionally I was sort of also quite unsure about which aspect of property I wanted to go into. You know, my degree was in property and construction at the time, so it's quite similar to Steve, where I didn't really have on my accreditations for the degree, the CIOB, the one RICS. It was still property, but again, it wasn't something that I could sort of start pursuing surveying immediately at the time. I'd had a little taster of, I mean, my degree would have led me into project management within the construction industry, and I'd had a little taster at the time during a sandwich course at university of what that would have been like, and it just wasn't for me, to be honest. So it's not something I wanted to pursue. It was really difficult getting into the surveying industry as a whole. I'd had no previous experience sort of relating directly to surveying. I'd had no point of contact, didn't have anyone within my immediate network who was a surveyor. And I guess I just didn't really sort of have much knowledge into the industry. Didn't have anyone in my family who was a surveyor, so sort of quite similar to Steve in that sense. Again, it was just, there were limited opportunities when I graduated, and I think just the fact that I had no experience kind of, I guess, went against me in that sense. So at the time, shortly after I graduated, I started looking around, and I took up an opportunity in residential surveying in Birmingham city centre. So I worked as an estate agent for just over 4 years. It was all, and I worked for one of the top and estate agents as well, so we'd have all the sort of, I guess, top end stock, expensive luxury real estate in the city centre, sort of all the high end quality sites really, and it was really, really exciting. I'd never sort of, that was, I guess, my first step into the adult professional working world, yeah, so it was all really, really exciting at the time. It allowed me to get in to know the market really well, sort of build connections with investors, get to know sort of my area, the strong locations around Birmingham, what suits investors, where is more popular for sort of someone who's looking for sort of occupying it themselves. And really, I guess I just kind of took, maximised those networking opportunities between sort of colleagues in other offices, across the industry, clients, really everyone around me. So again, like I said, I did that for about 4 years. I think it was all really exciting at first, and the novelty of it probably wore off quite quickly. But again, I just kind of stuck to it as the market was sort of continuing to get stronger at the time. I think at some point though, during that period, I had felt that I'd outgrown my role. I wasn't particularly feeling very challenged. and I couldn't sort of see that there was much prospect for career development and earning the kind of money that I wanted to, which, you know, was kind of a big motivator for me and for a lot of other people. So yeah, I was kind of feeling really, really down, and I was applying to sort of loads of commercial firms, probably spending my weekends, my evenings just applying everywhere and anywhere I could, and just not really sort of kind of getting or making the progress that I wanted to. Eventually, I sold an apartment for a client of mine who I didn't know was a chartered surveyor at the time, and found out after I'd sort of agreed a sale for his property. But yeah, he turned out to be a chartered surveyor and actually worked for one of the top firms, the corporate firms in the city centre. But I'd kind of built quite a good relationship with him by that time. Eventually found out what he did for a living, and it was kind of like, oh, this is exciting, or is it a coincidence? So kind of in that sense, it was that I guess motivated me a little bit more, and I think it helped. He was a really nice guy, you know, and sort of said to me, look, if anything comes up within this firm, I'll let you know, I'll recommend you for a role. And that's basically what happened. I sort of a role had come up within the ratings team at this place, and I think in the first instance I managed to get through 2 interviews, and I felt really, really positive about it. They sort of narrowed it down between myself and another candidate, and then unfortunately found out they gave the role to this other girl who, and only because she'd had a 1 year's experience more than I had doing, I think it was an internship or work experience, and it was almost sort of so disappointing to the stage where I was trying for months, didn't get anywhere. Finally felt like I'd got somewhere, and then kind of felt a bit knocked back. But you know, it's just part of a learning curve and part of life, you know, and it just makes you realise that the market's very, very competitive. It's not all about sort of you and what your qualifications are. It's about, you know, who else is out in the market and who the candidates are. Anyway, so obviously was very, very gutted. I really wanted to work for this firm, continue applied for roles, you know, within that period. Thankfully, another opportunity came up within the same firm. This time it was for the estates management department, and it was for a very, very high profile client. Again, went through a very similar process, and I think I was a bit more anxious this time, having not got through the first time round. Again, interviewed second 2 times, and they told me I got the position, and I was absolutely ecstatic. I was really, really excited, and I honestly couldn't believe it. Within that same week, I had 2 more offers from other companies, again, corporate firms, saying you've got the position. And it really kind of just makes you realise, and I felt really, really grateful, because I felt like I'd actually achieved something after battling months of rejection. And it wasn't necessarily a reflection on me, because I was interviewing well to get to stage where, you know, get into stage of final interviews. Unfortunately, because of my background, I guess, not having had any prior experience in that, I was up against people who'd had more experience than I had, and that was really what it was down to. But it just, again, something to take away from that is, you know, it's sometimes it can all be about timing. Just be persistent with the efforts. There's unfortunately no shortcut to it. So anyway, fast forwarding, I worked for the firm for about 4 years, worked on both occupier side, as in sort of estate management, and then I moved over and did client side work as well, so where you're effectively managing landlords' properties and looking after tenants in that sense. So it was a very, very challenging client, very challenging account to be on, especially sort of such early start, early part of the career. It was a very steep learning curve, but again, I think I've really benefited from it, and it's kind of how it shaped me as a career, as a surveyor. I also successfully completed the APC and became a chartered surveyor whilst I was still there. Definitely the most challenging thing I have done on a professional level. I would never ever want to do it again, but it is so worth it. Once you get your results and you've got that title at the end of it, it makes it all worth it, and it opens up so many doors for you. And the world's pretty much your oyster, I think, after that. So yeah, that was obviously a huge relief. Again, moving on, 2019, I left the firm, joined a slightly smaller firm in pursuit of sort of more general practice role, where I had more scope, I guess, to get involved in aspects of surveying which fell outside of property management, you know, including sort of landlord and tenant, sort of strategy side of things, valuations, you know, so again, sort of different aspects of it really. One thing, again, probably because I'm ex-corporate and I've worked for sort of smaller to medium-sized firms as well, and corporates are fantastic to work for. And again, I had my start from there. And I think the only kind of, from my perspective, it just depends on what you like as a person. For me, I found it's quite easy to get pigeonholed into doing sort of the same day-to-day thing. Whereas in sort of with the likes of Burley Browne, or I guess more medium-sized firms, there's definitely scope to sort of dabble in a little bit more. So again, sort of when you get to that stage, it is really dependent on what your preferences, but it's a great starting point. So yeah, this has kind of all led me to my current role at the moment. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm looking after clients, occupiers, you know, sort of various types of estates, industrial offices, retail units, mixed uses. I look after everything from running service charges for those estates, sort of day-to-day management, acting as sort of intermediate party between the landlord and tenant, managing those relations, you know, sort of ensuring that occupiers are complying with their lease obligations, following up on those, sort of dealing with any contentious issues that may come up. And just kind of really sort of working really closely with the other guys, you know, across the offices, and just working together and just providing the client with the best sort of service that we can give them, and really going beyond that and just adding value where we can. The management department here is sort of relatively new. I think it was only set up sort of 9 months or so before I came on board. So it's really, it's refreshing to sort of come into something where you're almost having to build it from scratch. And I think it's very rewarding in that sense. It's very stressful because obviously there's a lot to do, but I think when I get there, it is exciting at the same time, sort of being able to transfer my skills and what I've done in previous roles, implementing it here. And again, like I said, just really building the management department up from scratch and kind of, you know, making it my thing. So yeah, and just kind of finding out what works best for clients, buildings, tenants in that sense. So it's all quite exciting. I guess kind of just really wanted to come on to, you know, conclude with what I would sort of, I guess, tips that I would take away for you. I think the first and probably the most important one is don't underestimate the power of networking. Like I said, both myself and Steve have come from backgrounds where we didn't sort of get that start into surveying, and it's something we've kind of just ended up in kind of late. I mean, I think I was probably in my mid-20s or late 20s when I sort of ventured off into it. So, you know, you just don't know. It really is about who you know in the industry. Sometimes it doesn't come down to just what your qualifications are. It's who you know, who takes a liking to you. So I would say just make every effort to maximise that network, build rapport with people within the industry. Just be sincere, be genuine. You know, people really take to that. So I think that's what I'd do. Secondly, and again, this was a big sort of learning point for me, is I would encourage you all to try and secure internship or work experience where you can at an earlier stage. Again, from personal experience, and I feel like this did set me back quite a bit, was it will definitely come in your favour when you come to applying roles for roles down the line. So, you know, you kind of just have a bit of a head start there. Thirdly, have some sort of career plan. Probably don't do what I do and just kind of almost winged it. It's obviously worked out for me. thankfully in the end. But it can be quite stressful, having that uncertainty lingering around about what you want to do. So definitely give yourself something to focus on. Life doesn't always go to plan, but it's better to have something there to work towards. And finally, sounds like a cliche, probably is, but be persistent with your efforts. Even when you feel like you're not getting anywhere, it will eventually pay off, and ultimately you're going to get out what you put in. So that's kind of short and sweet, really. And I think that concludes my part of the presentation.
That's fine. Thank you very much to all three of you for giving us an insight to that. For everybody else on the call, if you've got any questions, literally any questions at all, put them in the chat, and we will get round to asking them for you. But to start off, we've got some pre-prepared ones. So I know Faryal has just touched on this, but for Ben and Steve, what's the kind of best career advice that you've potentially had, or that you could give to somebody looking to come into this industry?
Well, if I go first, sorry, Steve. I think touching upon Faryal, it's difficult because, drawing on my own experience, I was fortunate in that I found something that I quite liked at quite an early age, and I was quite happy to fix and stick to that all the way through. But I think it's important not to be too concerned with the opposite, which is don't worry if you can't find something that you want to do. But I think from that, the best advice, in answer to your question eventually, is sample as much as you can. I think probably, we've all mentioned experience numerous times. For me, work experience was a really good way of just literally sampling a couple of days or a working week in a profession that I had no real understanding in. So I think experience is key. Sample different things, and work hard. I think that's probably the best advice I could give. I think.
Yeah, I haven't probably got anything additional to add to that, really. I think there are plenty of resources out there. I mean, one of the good resources we have is the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors website. There is a wealth of information on there that will help give you an idea of the broad experience of what surveyors do. There is guidance on there in terms of training events. So I'd certainly make use of that as well, if that's something you're looking to go into. And I think that probably goes for most jobs, really, is make use of what you've got access to, the internet for your career. And that's where I'd say focus initially to get a better understanding. And then, as Ben touched upon, work experience is important. Even if it's just a week or 2 weeks across the summer. I know it's time out of your summer holidays and all that, but it is important in the longer run, and it's a small sacrifice for what potentially could be a much longer term gain.
Okay. Just to go off the back of that, then, obviously work experience seems very important in your line of career, in your industry. Does your company offer work experience to students, or do you know where we could get work experience within your industry?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Dan, I think we were probably going to mention this towards the end anyway, but if there are any students or any guys that are watching this or linked to this or you talk to that wanted to just come and chat to us to get a feel for what we do, then yeah, we have in the past and continue to encourage guys to come forward to talk to us. We're happy to speak to them. As I said, we've had a number of guys come to us for some work experience just to sample it, as Steve said, whether it's a week in summer or a school holiday or whatever it may be. Then yeah, we're happy to talk to you on that basis completely.
Okay, so this question is more based around the education side. So you said before you go into the 2 years of training specifically for a chartered accountant, there's some pre-recognized degrees that you should do at university. Do you mind giving a bit more information about that? And even if you do the degree, what are the different career options branching from that degree?
Is that Stephen Faryal, not me?
Shall I start off, Steve? So with mine, for example, my degree was CIOB accredited, which was still property, but within construction. So it wasn't, and whereas a lot of my friends at the time at university, they'd done real estate degrees, so it was RICS accredited. But again, I mean, in my case, I wasn't on a graduate route, and I did the similar experience route, which is where you have 5 years working experience, which is relative to pursuing surveying. And in my case, the RICS factored in the sort of about the 4 years experience that I had doing a state agency, and I'd done another year's experience in commercial. So really, it's just down to sort of from my perspective, my degree was still property related. I didn't sort of do a master's because it would have been more long-winded for me in that sense. But like I said, that kind of worked out for me in that sense. I think if your degree is non-property related, that's probably one for Steve, really, in terms of the conversion.
Yeah, I think just sort of taking a step back, if it is something you are looking to go into, I touched on it before, the RICS website does outline which degrees are accredited, and certainly, and they'll give you the names of the courses and which universities they are at. So that's a really good starting point. And once you know which degrees are accredited, you can then go onto those university websites, look at the prospectus, look at what the courses entail. And that's a really good way of getting an understanding of what the course content is. But the main thing, the quickest route, as we've touched upon, is the accredited degree. So certainly look at doing some research into that. If you come into it a little bit later, like I did, again, it's similarly, it's research, look at what courses you would have to do. The course I did, the master's, was a distance learning, so it was all online. So I didn't attend university in the sort of modern sense of the term, but it was all online from the University or College of Estate Management down in Reading. So all the teaching was online, seminars, resource, submitting work was all online, and it is challenging, but again, you get out what you put in. So I think the research part in terms of the course is a key part of moving forward for you.
Can I just add as well, it might be worth checking on, because I went to Birmingham City University, and I'm pretty sure that if you look at their sort of real estate related courses, I'm pretty sure they might have the accreditations for those degrees, so it might be worth just checking on that as well.
Okay, so there really is a range of different ways you can come into this career. There's no set in stone rule.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
So still thinking about education, your A-levels, which A-levels did you do, and how do you think your A-levels helped you in your careers today?
Shall I go first, guys? Mine was so long ago now, I can barely remember, but my A-levels didn't really have a direct relation to the degree course that I was taking. Albeit, as Steve said, I did take geography at A-level. Do you know, I think I took geography, history, design, technology at A-level. So there was no obvious real route from that directly into real estate. But I know it's been a long time since I did my A-levels, I hate to say. So there wasn't a direct link from one to the other. But I guess looking back, probably geography was most heavily linked to it, I think. So yeah, that was probably that was what I did.
Mine, as I said, I did something slightly different. A levels. It's called the International Baccalaureate. Now that's, I think at A levels, if I'm right, you do 4 at AS level, so year 12, and then I think is it 3 at year 13 at A level. I think it is.
It's changed a little bit now, but yeah.
So I did 6 subjects. So you do what's classed as 3 at high level, 3 at standard level. So mandatory ones are maths, English, language, and then you get to pick another 3. So I did geography, business, and I think I did ecology, ecosystems, which had huge crossover with geography. So there isn't any direct link between the course itself, but I think what the course I did helped to keep my options open. But certainly I think, yeah, geography and also business, because when you're working in a business, all sorts of different matters come into focus, which business business modules will help you with. So I think my course was varied and it helped me to keep my options open. And again, I then come back to, if you're looking to go to university, for example, the courses that you pick will have certain requirements in terms of which subjects you want to do. So again, it comes back to this research side. Look at the courses, look at what you need to be taking to get onto those courses. And that's probably the most important thing I'd say. I know I keep coming back to, but it is important you do. And certainly make use of the careers fairs that you'll have. If universities do come into schools, which I'm sure they will do, hopefully in the not too distant future, make use of those, ask questions, and you will obviously start to build up a bit more knowledge about what you need to move forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Obviously, every job has pros and cons. But what would you say, in your experience of this industry, is the absolute highlight of your career so far?
Faryal?
I would say the diversity of it and how much it varies. You know, you've got so many choices in terms of what you want to go into, from the service line, or whether you go into more general practice role, whether you want to act, for example, management side, whether you want to act on behalf of landlords, so client side, or tenants. Even sort of the variety in buildings, you know, you could be a specialist in industrial, office, retail, and it's just really, there is so much to choose from. You can't, it's almost impossible to get bored. And you know, from personal experience, I couldn't stay in a role that's repetitive, because it would just, it's not for me. And I think the main advantage of this is, you know, it varies so much. And I think the additional thing is, it's those qualifications, the RICS, are globally recognised. So if you're someone who doesn't necessarily sort of want to stay in the UK forever, or wants to sort of relocate abroad, you know, there's flexibility to do that. And for me, that's kind of, you know, the main points of it. It's just, yeah, the world's your oyster. So
yeah, I think I suppose my highlight again is qualifying. I think, as I said earlier, it opens up so many doors for you. As Faryal said, it is globally recognised. I think that's the most important thing, really. It opens doors for you. There will be better job prospects once you're qualified. It's much easier to move around the profession, experience different routes, different people. So I think that's the highlight, and it is very varied. No day is the same, and that is that truth, really. Every day is different. There is always something going on, and it keeps you interested.
Okay. And obviously, whenever somebody goes for a job, probably the arguably most important thing is the interview. And I'm sure many students watching this would agree that going to your first ever interview, especially with a big company, no matter the size, is probably quite a scary thing. What advice could you give to students on their interviews? What kind of certain styles do you think could work quite well?
Shall I take this, or do you want to go first, Ben?
So I'll have a stab at it first, Steve, but I'm not very good at interviews, but I think you almost have to learn to try and be better, because it forms part of your final assessment, particularly when you want to become a chartered surveyor. Your last test is an interview. All I can say from my experience is it's obvious to say, I know, but practice, 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 practice. When you are training to be a chartered surveyor, I think we all, Faryal and Steve and I, we all benefit from doing mock interviews for final assessment. Again, the more of those that you can do, it's like anything, just practice, do as many different style interviews as you can, practice what you're going to say, and obviously read upon your, whatever area it is that you're being tested on. It's always difficult, interviews, because you don't necessarily know what's coming. We all get nervous by them. But I think you just got to think that you can go in there with the knowledge that you've got and relay that to whoever's interviewing you. I think job interviews are probably slightly different, and Faryal, I think, mentioned about her interviews that she had, and she's right in being almost true to yourself. Personality goes a long way. Just present who you are to your employer, because it's not always about knowledge and technical ability. It can be personality as much as anything. So yeah, just be confident as best you can, and as I say, practice, read up, and just go over and over and over it until you've got it.
And just to add to that as well, just to add to that as well, that's definitely sort of hit the nail on the head. I think with a lot of companies now, it's not necessarily what you've got down on paper. They want to make sure that you fit in well with the team. And I think that kind of really will shine through when you're being yourself and you're being genuine, and you can really sort of, show potential employers what you've got to offer and what you can add, as your role to the company. So yeah, it's important.
Yeah, just to add on top of that, I think the interviews generally, I think it's get across your experience. I appreciate from obviously at your age, the first interview is probably quite difficult, but try and find things to talk about. What you've done at school, maybe what you've done outside of school, extracurricular activities. Like for example, this call that we're on now, you can talk about that, what your role was. And again, really, the interviews are there to, and this isn't just the assessment to become a surveyor. It's about sort of talking about your experience. So anything you've done, talk about it, have a discussion about it, and that's one of the key things I'd say to you, certainly from my point of view. Just talk about your experience.
Okay. Just because I'm conscious of time, I'll do the last question here. And then I'm sure if anybody else has got any other questions, they can probably get in touch with you guys and you'd be more than happy to answer it for them. Yeah. So for somebody looking to come into your trade, what would you say are some of the key skills that you look for when hiring a new employee?
I haven't done too much hiring myself, if I'm honest, but I can imagine. I think it ties in probably with what we were just going through, the experiences. I think that's a tricky one, really. I think being open and honest, demonstrating your experience and want and will to do the job for a firm that you're going for. I mean, for us at Burley Browne, what I think is great is that we've got a really good team that's really get on well, and we're all kind of similar in the way that we work very hard to achieve, a team goal, which is, continued work coming in, all that sort of stuff coming in. So I don't know, it's a tricky one really, I hate to say, because I haven't really ever hired anyone myself. I don't know whether Steve or Faryal have got anything they want to add to that. Sorry.
I'd probably sorry, Steve, I've cut you off again. I'd probably say sort of just really show that you're sort of able to gel well with the team. And again, like I said, it's just about being yourself. It's not about, people see through them. People can see sort of, sincerity and I guess, yeah, just your ability and willingness to do the work. And I guess just enthusiasm to, I think a lot of companies like people who are ambitious, and not necessarily just ambitious, but know what they want from the role. Like, this is where I am now, this is where I want to be sort of in a year, and almost sort of have a plan. Because I think by doing that, you're almost saying that these are the steps that I want to take in order to be here in, say, a year's time or 3 years' time, or whatever it is. And, naturally that's going to benefit the company as well. So I think it's really, just a combination of those things. And just someone with the ability to do the job, be open to sort of how things can work better, be able to offer that as well. I don't think any of us think we know everything. I think if we would take someone new on board, it's kind of like, give us your ideas, how can we improve things? So it's just really adding value to what your employers, I guess, or the business.
I think just to follow on from that, but just generally, really, I think the one thing I was always told was attitude is the key one. I know we've touched upon it, and it obviously under personality, but attitude, having the right attitude day to day, being hardworking, being organised. Those are sort of three of the big things that I think, not just in this role, but any role that employers will probably look at. So if you can demonstrate that, you've got good chances of picking up jobs. But again, Faryal and Ben both touched on, but team working. As you go through, you'll be able to, you'll work on your own, you'll work in a team. I think employers will look at that and they'll want to know that you can work through both, particularly if you go for sort of summer placements, internships, graduate programs. The one thing they always look at is how do you work in a team. That's one of the key things. So certainly focus on those areas, and that's if you do those right, then I think you'll be on the road to great things.
Okay, so again, thank you to all three of you for joining us tonight. I'm sure you've all got probably quite busy. What was that, Ben?
Sorry, it's a pleasure. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm sure you've probably all got quite busy schedules, and fitness in is obviously much appreciated on our behalf. I know I've learned quite a lot from this seminar because I wasn't too sure what chartered surveying was before today. So thank you again. And just for all the students, just to summarise on some of the points that they've said, that when going for an interview, be yourself, make sure you've got work experience and look into your career path prior to joining the industry that you want to, and try and keep as many doors open as possible, really.
Just from me, again, thank you all three of you for taking the time out of your schedules to speak to us tonight. And just on a final note to everyone watching, the Chamber of Commerce and the Youth Council's chosen charity for 2021 is the YMCA. Hopefully you have heard of them before, but if you haven't, they help thousands of students and young people our age by providing emergency accommodation and youth clubs to get them out of really difficult situations. So this past year, as you know, has been difficult for all of us. So please try and donate as much as you can, and we will post the link in the chat for you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Devanshi. Thanks, Dan. That's really, really appreciated. Thanks to Ben and to Faryal and to Steve. I did have one last question of what's the most expensive property you've ever sold or rented. Perhaps you can let the team know in one word answer. But that was one of the questions I wanted to find out.
My house.
£5. I love it.
No. I don't know. I probably haven't got a very exciting answer, I hate to say, Chris. Probably somewhere in the Black Country is probably mine, I'm afraid.
No worries, no, that's absolutely fine, no problems. Okay, good stuff. And well, I really appreciate everyone's time, I really do. Thanks so much, Steve, Ben, Faryal. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And yes, thank you. You can make your way back home, enjoy your evening, and we will resend the presentation over to everyone as well, so they can sort of get an idea of some of those advice. But really good advice and hugely appreciated. So thanks, Ben, Steve, Faryal, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers, Chris.
No worries, thank you.
Cheers. Take care.
Bye.